I cannot believe that we're already in the back half of 2024.
Are you kidding me?
But here we are. Before you know it, the calendar will be turning again, and that means we are already getting ready for 2025 conferences, and one that I'm personally very excited to attend again is the Insights EDU conference. If you care at all about growing enrollment and building a student-centered higher ed experience, you really should be at this conference. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available. Visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register. That's visit insightsedu.com for more information and to register.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and today we are extremely excited to announce our paid subscription service. By subscribing today, you will get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is your special guest host. I'm Dr. Lori Shandison, and I'm the host of EdUp Accreditation Insights. And I'm just taking some time off today to help out Joe and Elvin to speak to the president of Fairleigh Dickinson University, Dr. Michael Avaltroni. Did I pronounce that correctly?
That was perfect. Thank you.
Well, we are so happy to have you here, and you have such an interesting background. You've been the president at Fairleigh Dickinson for a year and some change, closer to 2 years at this point, but you have a long history there. So I know you started off in different places, but I'd like to begin here. Can you share the pivotal moments from your early days as an undergraduate chemistry student at Fairleigh Dickinson that influenced your decision to stay and to contribute to the institution for over 2 decades?
Sure. Happy to. That's I think a lot of kind of the foundational piece of me. Started as an undergraduate there at FDU. It was a time when I was sort of still trying to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, and got very much involved in the very first weeks on campus. Engaged with a faculty member doing research in a class that I actually didn't even think I wanted to take. It was a general chemistry course that I sort of was forced into because it was what was open and available at the time. And I fell in love in the first 5 weeks, largely through the personal interactions of a faculty member who really was transformational for me and very impactful. And when that sort of happened, that made me quickly realize the impact that the role of a faculty member has on students. And it was serendipitous that 4 years later, after I had finished and gone on to graduate school, I stayed in touch with that faculty member. And he reached out to me when I was finishing graduate school and actually said, I'm retiring and I think you should come and interview for my role. And that began my transition back to FDU on the other side of the classroom as a faculty member.
Wow. I mean, I think to your point, sometimes we underscore that relationship that faculty have with their students. I had a similar experience at UB, State University of New York at Buffalo, with a professor there, Dr. Ann McAvoy, and she was awesome, and I still keep in touch with her. We recognize her for Women's Month, but that exchange and that experience was transformative to me. And, you've transitioned through various roles at Fairleigh Dickinson, from faculty member to founding dean and now president. What have been the most significant challenges and rewards at each stage of your career?
It's been wonderful because it's been one university and a long time at it, but it's been a lot of different roles, so much so that it's almost been like having a bunch of different jobs at a bunch of different places. The original role was as a faculty member. I was brought in largely to teach physical and general chemistry, and I loved that. I really loved classroom teaching. I loved the interaction with students. In fact, it's probably the one thing I miss the most now in being full-time as an administrator, is not having the ability to be as regular in the classroom. But I enjoyed that immensely. I found that tremendously fulfilling. particularly when you're teaching first year students and you're realizing that, students are coming in, transitioning themselves to the college experience, trying to get acclimated, and you have such an opportunity to create such an impact. And then from there, I became department chair for after a few years, and I enjoyed the administrative side of things. I really enjoyed the opportunity to kind of begin building and begin to think about what was next. And that's where in 2008, I was approached by our then university president who asked me, what do you think about the concept of starting a pharmacy school? And I said, I have no idea. I'll get back to you. And next thing I knew, I was sort of the internal seed planter for beginning a process of exploring a pharmacy school at the university. And I did that as a founding dean and largely in that role for over a decade. We created 5 different new programs, all from scratch. And that was one of the rare occasions in higher education where you had the opportunity to really build something new, almost from concept on paper all the way through to a living reality. And that was a thrill because it was taking something that we had sort of dreamed up and something that we said we had ambition to do differently. And we were able to do that in real time in the curriculum and in the facility and in the hiring and in all the phases. So that was a tremendous thrill, and had the opportunity to build a program in pharmacy and physician assistant studies, occupational therapy, social work, and public health, all during my time there. So that was a wonderful experience and a great learning experience as well.
Those are tremendous feats to be able to do so much and build and create new. But you've also secured 10 US patents. Now that's an impressive feat. And I'd like you to tell our audience how your background in research and innovation influenced your approach to academic leadership and program development.
A great question, because it's one I think about regularly, in that it's been so long since I've been inside a lab, and yet so much of what I learned in particular, I had a wonderful experience in grad school. My grad advisor is somebody I stay in touch with to this day, get together with regularly, because he was so impactful, not just in teaching chemistry, which was certainly useful for a time, but in really teaching the impact of the scientific method and scientific thinking and innovative approaches, just as a skill set that is so useful to me today when even I'm so far from doing chemistry on a day-to-day basis. So it was a lot of really how I approached even creating our new programs in the health sciences. It was coming from an outsider's view. I always sort of joked that I was in no way partial to any one way of thinking, because I'd never done any of it. I wasn't a pharmacist by training. I wasn't a PA by training. So all of this was kind of a learning curve from its origin point. But a lot of that meant taking that innovative thinking approach and that mindset of sort of entrepreneurism and in some cases, just kind of that black box approach of I'm going to go at this and I'm not going to take a preconceived partial experience that I've either lived or had, but rather something that I could truly do from the ground up and say, you know what, we're going to think about this. We're going to ask the right questions. We're going to approach this scientifically, and we're going to think about it critically. And even now, I always say that I think my training in scientific thinking and scientific design is regularly useful to me when I'm decision making or thinking about where we go next or thinking about ways to innovate in the higher ed landscape that's so desperately needed right now.
Yeah, I think you built up your analytical muscle, and you've been able to apply that skill in many different areas. And, another area that our listeners will be interested in to know about is fundraising. And your health science school raised over $10 million through different affiliations. So what advice would you give to other higher education leaders looking to build and sustain such impactful partnerships?
I think you just hit on it in the words you used. It has to be a partnership. I think for far too long, higher ed has taken the approach of, we need, you have, so give, right? And I think that is a day that's gone and no longer returning. The thought process of just give to us because we have need is a distant memory. Now it has to be about meaningful and impactful partnership where both parties really can benefit from the thing that's happening. And I think a lot of what we even approach now is thinking about ways to create these sort of win-wins, right? That certainly will benefit the institution, but the thing that we're building or the thing that someone is investing or the thing that someone is doing with us has a mutual benefit and a mutual return on that investment. And I think if you can demonstrate that return and demonstrate and articulate clearly that the person's investment is very much demonstrable and tangible, I think you have a much easier story to tell and a much more relational opportunity than just sort of that philanthropic because we need something right now.
And you answered the question that I was just going to ask, because I was going to ask about the role that partnerships played, clearly a crucial role. And I was going to ask you to elaborate on Fairleigh Dickinson's collaboration with organizations like Becton Dickinson and how they've enhanced educational experiences for the students. And I think I heard you say that these have to be mutually beneficial endeavors. Did you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think it's the key in my estimation is it has to be a benefit. So many of, and I think now we're quickly seeing this sort of come to light in real time, particularly as we're focusing a lot of our attention on, for example, our health sciences and expanding those programs. The desperate need that healthcare organizations have for talent and the ability to retain talent and the ability to develop new talent and the availability of resources for workforce. There's so much of an opportunity for us to articulate the value of what we bring as educators to this partnership, right? That it's not just about you're giving because you want to train, future graduates. You want to train essentially and develop people who, if we do this right together, will be the people who come to you, can be ready to hit the ground running from day one, who understand your culture, who understand the work that's being done, and then are going to come and stay. And all of those opportunities to develop that sort of meaningful symbiosis, I think, is a critical piece to how you get a lot of buy-in from corporations, from foundations, from hospitals and health systems, from a whole host of different entities who at face value might not be natural partners at the kind of first blush.
Well, that I want to shift right here, because I think partnerships are very important to institutions, especially now. It's almost like business critical, like one of those essential things that you have to have in order to be sustainable in this higher education landscape. But I'd like to talk a little bit now about student success and inclusion. And your Latin Student Success Program earned the Example of Excelencia Award. So can you discuss the key components of this program and how it has effectively uplifted underrepresented groups?
Sure. I'd be happy to. It's one of our real pride points is that we've been built largely on a legacy of always serving students as an access point to the communities that are around us. That's been our day one legacy, and it's been something we've tried to stay true to, even as we've changed our scope, and in some cases we've changed who those parties are that we serve. But our programs in Latino Promise and Puerta El Futura and Hacer are three programs that we have that are three hallmark pieces of our Hispanic Center at the university. We have a fourth one called Avanza, which is actually a high school pipeline program, but all of them have really taken the approach of looking at student success through the lens of a lot of the needs of students coming into the center from the communities surrounding us. And one of the things we've really embraced is we've embraced a whole person approach, that we know that there are academic components and academic supports that students often need as part of their journey. In particular, in the population of students in our Hispanic Center, oftentimes that's some additional language learning support, which is part of our programs. In fact, all of the programs have some form of ESL support along the way in varying forms. But additional to that, we also have a lot of cultural support that we provide. One of the things that I think, boast about, and I think one of the strengths of recruiting students who are first generation coming to the university, often first generation in the US as well, they come as part of a family unit, right? The mindset of leave and cleave that oftentimes is thought of for the traditional college student is not at all part of the culture of a student coming who's part of a family unit. In some cases, is probably part of the earning unit with regard to making ends meet. So accommodating and understanding those students, understanding their challenges, their wants, their needs, their desires, their limitations in some cases of what they can and can't do, even with regard to affordability, scheduling, other types of logistics. Making it an easier road for them to navigate is something that we believe has been one of the real hallmarks of the success of that program. And it's really all relational. So much of it is about building relationships with the students, understanding them, understanding their story, their background, where they come from, what their desires and ambitions are, and trying our hardest to make sure we build a community around them that sort of embraces that journey and understands that it's okay sometimes if a student doesn't want to come to an extracurricular event. It's okay if a student wants to commute rather than living on campus. That each student's journey is individual and unique because their resources are unique, their needs are unique, their family unit is unique. And we've really tried to embrace that and have seen a lot of positive impact and positive success, so much so that really our outcomes are about 2.5 times the national average for graduation rate. And we've seen that the time to graduation, particularly in these programs at the associate's degree level, are in fact about on the order of 2.1 years relative to 2 years. So it's not this burden of a length in time to get to where students want and need to go.
Calling all higher ed marketing and enrollment management professionals. Hear, hear. The Insights EDU conference is back. This is your chance to level up your marketing and enrollment management strategies, and the EdUp Experience podcast will be there once again. Join us at the Ritz-Carlton, New Orleans, February 12th through 14th for an unforgettable conference. Registration is now open with early bird pricing.
Outstanding.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Are you enjoying the conversation so far? Good, I hope so. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early before anybody else and ad free, so you don't have to hear my voice during these ads? And did you also know that you could get extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. So go to edupexperience.com, that's EDUP experience.com, and become a subscriber today. First, you got to sign up to our free email newsletter, and then you'll find out how to become a subscriber. Again, go to edupexperience.com.
You champion access and mobility. I mean, championing. I can't even say my words today. Access and mobility is a core part of your mission. Embracing the students and, I wouldn't say protecting, but providing them with the services that they need to be successful by building these partnerships, I think are a part of your mission. So I'd like to ask how you envision the future of higher education in terms of inclusivity and accessibility for all students.
It's one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we talk regularly about the impact that institutions like ours have on providing this upward mobility, right? That oftentimes, one of the things I always pride myself on is when we hear our students' stories, we hear about students who truly climb a ladder through their journey with us to places where they probably never imagined that they could go. And in some cases, without us, probably never could have gotten. And it's oftentimes taking students who, in some cases, don't even know that college is for them, don't know that they're college ready. With great regularity, we hear stories from very successful alums who say, your university was the only one that gave me a shot. And 4 years later, I found my place, I found my calling, and now I'm the CEO, or now I'm,
I love those stories.
Right. And those are the ones that, that really kind of resonate and make you realize that it's all worth it. And I think for the future, one of the things we see that, and I think this is not just for us, higher education in general has to rethink the mindset of this sort of, we're all in this as competitors, right? I think we have this mindset of we're all competing for a falling number of students. So I need to make a better offer. I need to have better outcome. I think we need to start thinking of ourselves as being part of an ecosystem. And we've really started to embrace, how do we draw in, rather than sort of rivaling, the 2-year community colleges, high schools? How do we draw in even other institutions at the 4-year level to create these journeys for students that make college more affordable, more accessible, and more meaningful in some cases, so that not every student needs the same 4-year journey, right? We've talked about a lot of what we're starting to build now with a partnership through community colleges, through our high schools, and through some employers, of a sort of learn while you earn pathway that allows students to begin their Head Start in high school, logging college credits, complete the journey at the 2-year institution, and then begin engaging in a job at an associate's degree level to then come to us while they work their way through their next years and get an accelerated bachelor's and master's degree with us to begin upskilling and moving their way up that career ladder. That's a win for everybody. I don't see that as, oh, we've lost 2 years of enrollment and tuition. I see that as we've completed the journey for students to give them what we can probably provide best, which is baccalaureate and master's level. The 2-year college has done the same with what they do best. The high school has done the same with what they do best, and the employer has done it as well. And I think that's the sort of journey that creates a lot more access to a lot more students, particularly non-traditional pathway students, whether non-traditional in age, demographic, or just their journey from where they have to go in order to navigate the affordability factor, the time factor, and everything else.
I'm so happy to hear that you have this innovative approach to higher education right now, because the old way is not working and the old way can't work. And I know that you're a fan of Walt Disney, and he has had innovative approaches that influence your leadership and philosophy. And I'm just curious to know, how have you integrated lessons from Disney's vision into your strategic initiatives at Fairleigh Dickinson?
You know, one of the things we did, and it was probably not the most popular thing, was early on when we started our pharmacy school, we actually brought Disney Institute in to do training. And it was largely on the basis of a book that I had read that was in the healthcare space. It was a well-known book at the time, was What If Disney Ran Your Hospital, right? And I often think, very interesting, I could say the same thing about what if Disney ran your university, right? And you see how, you know, Disney's user experience lens, right? This sort of thinking about immersive storytelling and the immersive journey that you create for your guest, in the case of Disney's term, when they're talking about people visiting their parks or other resources. But realizing that same philosophy should hold true for us, right? That we do, in fact, need to think about sort of how we can reimagine what we do through the lens of storytelling. Again, talking about those journeys of students who are successful because they've taken the start and they've sort of gone out on a limb and taken the journey into college, even if they didn't know that it was for them. Storytelling around the things that we do best and the impact that we have, and then creating a concerted and deliberate experience for students that thinks about the entirety of their journey, right? One of the things they talk about often in the Disney Institute training is this attention to detail that Disney parks or Disney experiences have, understanding that every person's eye is focused on something different, right? So if one piece of the set is not dressed the right way, someone will notice, right? Maybe not everyone will.
Right.
And thinking about it the same way when we walk our college campuses, that every one of the facets of support needs to be there, because a different student will need a different layer at a different time. So if you're leaving certain things to chance, chances are certain students will fall through those cracks. And it needs to be a concerted effort with everyone really thinking about the journey in order for things to work well.
You know, I was going to ask about creating magic, because I know that Creating Magic by Lee Cockrell was something that provided you with valuable insights. Do you want to share some of the leadership principles from that book that you've applied in your role as president?
Sure. Yeah, that's one of my favorite books, because there's so many jewels there of sort of the real approach. One of the things I always remember that I think is an important one is, you know, talking about sort of the principles of servant leadership. And one of the things that I know he instills very early on and very regularly in the book is to always remember that as a leader, first of all, two things: that every person in your organization is a leader with the lowercase L, even though only certain members carry the title, right? And you often think of that, particularly on the college campus, where certain people who may not have an org chart title of leadership are the ones making probably the most day-to-day impact on the lives of students, right? It's the person in the advising office or the financial aid office or the person who helps the student get added into a class that they need to graduate, who probably doesn't appear anywhere on the org chart sort of hierarchy, but is the one that is probably going to keep the student there and keep them persisting rather than stopping out and dropping out. But the other thing that he drives home regularly, and this always resonates with me, is to remember as a leader that everyone's always watching, right? That you
Right.
as a leader are in the things you say and do, but also in the things you don't say and don't do, that you have to assume that people are watching you, and they're watching you both to assess your style, to assess what you're willing to accept and not willing to accept, and to also assess if you're someone who's willing to kind of tell everybody else to do something, but lives by a different set of principles, right? It's always the first one in, the last one out. That
Mhm.
sort of mindset that I think is so critically important when you're trying to really create a culture of leadership on a college
Absolutely.
campus or anywhere else.
And you have to model integrity and transparency.
Yes.
And to your point that you value those with whom you work, because they're not going to listen to you say that. They need to see it. To your point, they need you to model that.
No question. It's so important, and it's so, you can send out any sort of number of email blasts to the community telling them how important things are, but it's only when you're in front of and around people that they're noticing and they're saying, yeah, he seems to be all about the things he says versus this isn't what it said in the email, because this is not the buy-in. So I completely agree. And now more than ever, there's so much of, I think people are so frustrated on in this higher education space because it's such a challenging environment in so many facets. All the more reason why you really have to rally people to understand the importance of their purpose. And it's one of the few areas, healthcare is probably another one where truly everybody at every level makes an impact, right? And it's an impact that can be life transforming. Is again, it can be anybody from someone who intervenes and makes some sort of an important intervention to keep a student's bill from becoming in arrears, or goes and makes the extra effort to make sure a student has what they need. It's the sort of thing that every person can be part of that story towards the overall success of someone's journey.
As the president, what are your top priorities for executing your strategic vision and ensuring Fairleigh Dickinson's sustainability in this rapid changing higher education landscape? How do you do that?
I think one of the things that I've really tried to do is first thing I've tried to do is instill in everyone sort of this understanding that we need to be bold. I think that this is the one thing I say to most people is I say the only assurance I can give you is that if we do nothing, we're going to find ourselves on the wrong side of every trend line, right? That every indicator across the landscape of higher ed suggests the same thing, which is that the model was unsustainable. It has to change drastically. There really has to be a new day for higher education where it's reimagined in its fullest. So I've tried to kind of challenge our community to think boldly, because the nibbling around the edges of, we'll add a new 3-credit course here, or we'll create a new institute somewhere on the fringes, which has oftentimes been the thing that higher ed sort of fallen back on,
Right.
isn't going to move the needle. It's just not going to make an impact. And we have to understand that if we're really going to try and transform the landscape, it has to be done through bold and strategic action. So that's, I think, the first phase. The second phase is then to begin giving examples of the direction that we want to point towards to sort of make those bold changes. So we've launched sort of as one of the hallmarks of our strategic plan when I stepped into the role was to create a students first plan, right? To think about, let's look through the lens of putting students as our guiding North Star of everything we do, and then evaluate and measure how effectively are we doing this. Because if we're doing this well, then students should be coming, thriving, staying, and graduating. And unless we're saying that every student is, there's room to grow. And the more distance we have from that perfection, the more change we need. So we've really tried to kind of recalibrate everybody's thinking. And I think it's, frankly, I think it's a missed area in higher ed where we've oftentimes had the students as sort of an afterthought of, we'll keep our culture going and the students will come along for the ride or they won't, right? And I think rethinking how students have to be put at the center of that entire landscape, I think is critically important. And it's been really helpful for us in kind of benchmarking whether or not certain things that we do are up to speed or up to snuff, or whether or not they need to be rethought and reinvested in.
You have provided so much valuable insight based on your extensive experience, your vision of higher education, what that means, and how you've applied that at Fairleigh Dickinson. And it's amazing. And I think this podcast is going to be one that people will get great value from, just understanding your perspectives. And, I agree when you said that there needs to be some boldness. There needs to be bold change going on. We can't operate the way that we used to. And it does require some risk, some vulnerability, but it has to be mitigated risk. But there has to be risk, because to your point, if you do nothing, nothing will change, or you may drift into areas that are not positive for the institution. And as we wrap up, I'd like you to just share any advice you'd give to aspiring higher education leaders, who want to make a lasting impact on their institutions and their communities.
It's such a good question, because I think it's even advice for me sometimes, because sometimes in the day to day, I think all of us kind of get lost in the the mundane and sometimes the overwhelming of a lot of things going in a lot of directions, all of which in higher education are being challenged right now. I think the thing that we have to get back to realizing is that when it's done right, when it's done effectively, when it's done impactfully, higher education is unparalleled in the impact it has on lives, right? And it's what we were talking about before, the impact when you hear certain students who came on a shoestring without, in some cases, their, the last dollar in their wallet spent on everything that they needed to try and take a chance on their future. And you hear where they get to 4 years later and then beyond, and the things they accomplish, and that they really link directly back to the impact of their time on campus. There are very few areas and industries that get the opportunity to hear those stories with such great regularity. So we have to keep reminding ourselves that we can and do have an impact when we do things right. But it's incumbent upon us to continue to evaluate and challenge the current narrative that higher education is not a business, that it's not in need of change, that it's not in need of a bold new direction, because all of these things are our reality. And the sooner we come to terms with them, and the sooner we wrap our head around a different, but still, I think, very important future, the more likelihood we have of really continuing this impact and changing what's becoming a challenging narrative that higher education is this overpriced and undervalued thing that we need to get away from, and we need to move back to in the real and tangible examples of the transformational impact we have on students' lives.
That is a great point to end on. And Michael Avaltroni, the president at Fairleigh Dickinson University, who has been there forever, student through administrative roles and responsibilities. And there's so many other questions I could ask about that whole transition and the different roles you had and what came along with that. But we don't have time. But hopefully we will have you back. And I just want to let you know how much we do appreciate the time that you spent speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was delightful. It was great talking with you, and would welcome the chance to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, there you have it, everyone. You've just been EdUp'd, and you really should take advantage of all of the different podcasts on the EdUp Experience platform. Again, I host Accreditation Insights, and me and my co-hosts have a lot of fun over there talking about anything and everything related to accreditation. But you also can wet your beak with different topics. EdUp in Espanol, there's EdUp in Mandarin, there's EdUp Tech, there's EdUp Marcom. It just goes on and on and on, and we cover everything and anything in the higher education space. Again, we enjoyed a lovely session today with the president of Fairleigh Dickinson University, and you should pop over to their website if you want to learn more about their institution, but we certainly have appreciated having him here today, and we wish all of our listeners and just a great day and a great experience, and we hope to see you back soon.
Higher education is evolving. And if you're in marketing and enrollment management, then you need to be at the Insights EDU conference.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Insights EDU 2025 is happening February 12 through 14 in New Orleans, Louisiana. This is your chance to explore the latest trends in higher education and discover new and innovative strategies to level up your program marketing and enrollment. Hear from some of the best speakers in the industry, from companies like Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, and more. Registration is now open, so secure your spot while early bird pricing is still available.
Hey everybody, this is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. Did you enjoy that conversation? I hope you did. Did you know that you can actually hear this conversation early on and ad-free? And you can also hear extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content. That's right, original content and invites to special events, all while helping to sustain EdUp. Did you know that? Well, if you didn't know, now you know. To become a subscriber, go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com to subscribe to our free email newsletter to learn how you can get access. Again, that's edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com.